Greetings, mortals, and welcome. Please present your tickets for validation. Thank you. Your existence has been acknowledged, and you have been granted access every Thursday and Friday. You will be accompanying your guides, Krista and Brandy, along with a world-renowned guest. They will be exploring an intriguing tendril of what humans refer to as reality each week, as they strive to advance you further down the path to the truths of your physical earth and what lies on the other side. Remember to please keep your hands and feet in the vehicle at all times, and do not exit until the craft has come to a complete stop.
Hey everybody, welcome. Happy Thursday.
Happy Thursday.
Happy Thursday.
We actually have Tex here with us tonight because Brandy's lives in a small town in Missouri, and they're having a party weekend down there with Kid Rock, and I know Jason Aldean's down there.
Rockin' America.
Everybody's sucking up her internet. So Tex obliged to come on and be part of it tonight, huh, Tex?
Yeah, y'all. It's going to be interesting because I took a couple of nighty-night pills about 30 minutes ago.
Oh shit!
So if you see me hit my microphone and wake,
right? That's not good.
But
Not good.
yeah, man, I was just chewing the fat with our tech troll and when I got your message and everything.
Yeah.
So,
Well, her service is just then people need to leave her town, leave her internet alone. Damn it.
right.
I know.
Crap, we got to do here.
That's right. So anyway, we appreciate everybody watching tonight and tuning in. We actually have a good show. We have our friend, the Squatch detective, Steve Kulls. And we met him last year's Alabama Bigfoot conference. I'm going to just go ahead and bring him up real quick. Looks ready. Hey, Steve, how are you?
Howdy, everybody.
Hey. Good to see you again.
Good to see you. And you know what? I just realized something. And if you saw me when I was backstage, if you saw me get off camera real quick and run back, it's because I didn't know that Tex had his own whiskey.
That's awesome.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
That's awesome. Now, we met Steve last year at the Alabama Bigfoot Conference. You spoke there, and we guess that Saturday night we all went out and had a good time, didn't we?
Yeah, we did.
Sure did. That was a great little cantina we went to there.
Yeah, it was fun. A lot of fun. So anyway, we appreciate you stopping in. And honestly, you've been on my radar for a long time to get in touch with you to come on the show. It's just like, man, it's just a matter. I am really slacking and reaching out to people. So I apologize.
Right. Hey, and you know what? We accomplished something that night too. Now that I think about it, we got somebody to open their bar up that was already closed.
We sure did. And we also, yep. And that's the night that Greg Ogles decided he liked wine because that was about all they have. Remember, me and Greg went to drinking wine, and I had a beer, and you got my beer, Steve. I gave that to you.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
That was the same trip I introduced y'all ladies to blowjob shots.
That was. Now you remember, Tex, our show is PG-13.
Yeah. Well, it's out of the bottle now. What are you going to do? Yeah.
Usually what happens to a show when I show up, it quickly diverts into adults only.
Right.
Well, I guarantee you that our shows are no stranger to taking dirt roads. I guarantee you that. You know, I had met Steve a couple of other times down in Jefferson and stuff, and really never got to sit down and talk with him.
Yeah.
And we when I tell you what, man, we hit it off up there in Alabama. We spent a lot of time talking about a lot of stuff, you know. And you broke my heart the first time I met you. You were telling me, I said, "Man, what do you think about this picture?" Oh, that's fake. It's
Yes,
but what about this one? Oh, yeah, that's fake too. I know the guy that had the model, and you know, I'm like, well, damn it.
Despite that, I'm still popular at parties, even though I kill a lot of people's like.
That was a good weekend. That was a fun weekend, though. Totally enjoyed hanging out with you, Steve. That was a good one.
You're welcome. You're welcome to drink with me anytime, there, Mr. Kulls.
Same here, my brother.
Yes, for sure. For sure. Yeah, Tex, you mentioned that people in chat are like, "What did we tune into?"
You think you tuned into something weird? Y'all go out with us.
Oh, that's funny. Too funny. So, Steve,
Sure.
What got you into Bigfoot? Let's just start there.
Well, people who know my background, I'm a professional investigator, or at least I was. I kind of hung those shoes up last October, until I got run over by not a reindeer, but a trailer. But I always had an interest in mysteries. And when I was a young child, I got, of course, I was interested in all the in search of stuff. But I got really into the Bigfoot stuff because my father, was on this new thing with on TV called Home Box Office. And, the set had this long cord that you could put on there and you push the little button and it goes to a different channel. And the first I remember, here's this little boy running through this field, and you hear this in the background, and then boom, The Legend of Boggy Creek, a true story. And even at that young age, when I was 7 or 8, I could read very well. I would read, believe it or not, I was actually reading college level stuff by the time I was 12. I just was an avid reader, and that was, one of the benefits of having some old school parents. My parents kind of skipped a generation. My father was 50 when I was born. And my mother was 35 when I was born. And my father grew up in the Great Depression, was in World War II and whatnot. So I got that urge to read, and I was basically forced to read. So, by the time I was 12, I was reading Dr. John Napier's book. I was reading books by Ann B. Slate and a book written by Eric Bauman, but it turned out that was just a pseudonym for John Keel. So I was reading these books at 12 years old and understanding them and whatnot. But then what happens when you hit 14, puberty starts kicking in. I don't care about that stuff. I care about cars and girls. That's it. Right? Forget about it. Go through and start going into my professional career. Now I'm an investigator at this point for 10 years. And a buddy of mine says, "Hey, have you seen this book?" I go, it happens to be a book about Bigfoot sightings called Monsters of the North Woods. And it was about Bigfoot sightings about an hour and a half away from my house and in Vermont. And I was like, forgot about the whole thing. And I was like, oh, wow, really? So at that point, I says, I wonder if this is just a bunch of baloney, because now I'm an older guy. I've dealt with the criminal element for 10 years. So I'm a little more cynical about things than I was when you're, a preteen. So as I started talking, I actually got to meet some of the people that were witnesses in the book. I talked to police officers. I talked to a firefighter. I talked to a couple of scientists that actually saw these things. And by that time, I was already a trained forensic interviewer. So I'm sitting there reading them while they're talking to me. I'm like, they're not lying. They're telling me the truth. So it's like, there's something to this. And so I just pressed on. And here we are today, 25 years later, almost 26.
Wow. That's you've been doing this a long time.
Yep, 98.
You're one of the OGs into this, man.
Hard to believe I am. It's like I remember when I wasn't. Now it's like, oh my, I am one of the old geezers in the business now.
Right. That's hilarious. Real quick,
I'm just a baby.
I want to thank Nikki and Gary Spikes and Diane and Tex. Thank you all very much. Thank you. And also, if anybody that is in chat has not subscribed to Steve's channel, I am dropping it in the chat now. Please go over and subscribe to his channel and show him some love. Turn on your bell icons too, because you've got some really good content. We're going to talk about some of that kind of stuff tonight. So I don't always get to watch like your live shows, but I do go back and watch. I've always liked your stuff. And, we being, your name, Squatch Detective. So I get it, because I get what you do, and I appreciate what you do.
That was completely an accident how that happened.
Mm-hmm. Really?
Yeah, I mean, that was just an email address I created because I worked as a private investigator. So I was called, and there was a guy at the time, he passed away many, many years ago by the name of Squatch Commando, and he was a former Special Forces guy. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, what? I'm looking for a handle in this Bigfoot. I said, I'll just call my email Squatch Detective. And then it just kind of transformed after a while. Like, I'm going to create a website. Well, I might as well call it squatchdetective.com. And then that came out January 1, 2006. And then, believe it or not, I've been podcasting since September 24th of 2006. That's how long I've been doing podcasts. So, yeah. You want to talk about OG? I do have the longest running podcast in the Bigfoot world right now.
That's crazy. I had no idea.
Started on Blog Talk Radio because that was a brand new medium back then. Mm-hmm. And then we took a couple of times where we went to, there was a channel called the Paranormal TV Network, where the first time we actually dabbled with video. And that was way before its time. That was like back in, I want to say 2015, 2016. Wasn't that long, that was long before, YouTube started picking up with a lot of podcasts. And whatever, the person who ran the network wanted to spend more time with their grandkids, and that was the end of the network. So we went back to Blog Talk. And then eventually we decided, when StreamYard was developed, I was like, wow, that's it. Moved the video, and the rest is history. So we've been on YouTube now, streaming there already, and it's kind of hard to believe that we're going to go into our 5th year next month streaming on YouTube. Wow, and it's like, wow.
That's awesome. Very cool. We started this channel in 2020. So I get where,
yeah. It goes by fast.
It does. And, like the, more people you meet too, the more people you have in that.
But I mean, the fun thing about it is, like, I had John Green on as a guest. Mm-hmm. I had Dr. Wolf Henner Fahrenbach as a guest, when these people are very active in the community. Right. Gehinden had just passed. But so many that I've had over the years. John Eric Betchard, another old school guy that was on our show. Probably one of the most entertaining shows we ever had.
That's awesome. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about, we do a lot of shows on Bigfoot, and Brandy and I, as I told you backstage, let's just start out with orbs. Let's just go there.
Well, what do you want to know about orbs? They're paranormal, last I knew.
Yeah, well, I have actually saw orbs out in the woods. Brandy has too. We seen them. We were together. There was a bunch of us there, and different colors and different sizes.
So, I always look at the whole orb situation in a couple of different ways. Number one, if you see orbs, are you seeing a Bigfoot with it? No. Okay, then you can't make that leap, right? Let's face it, there is more stuff out in our woods than we'd like to admit. There is a lot of paranormal stuff that goes on in Native American lands, Native American burial grounds, wars that happen, battles that happen that we may not even know. They could, for all we know, they could be 2 undocumented Native American battles where a couple of tribes went at that. We don't know any history of that. Sure. So there is a natural propensity that, if there's orbs, it could be something just strictly paranormal. Yes, there are certain types of gaseous anomalies that people will see these lights come up from the ground and rise up and disappear into the sky.
Mm-hmm.
But if an orb is sitting there just floating there and it starts, zipping around, I mean, it could be that. What if something's off in the distance? Could be a UAP, UFO, whatever you want to call it as well. So there's a lot of other explanations than just Bigfoot. Mm-hmm. Now, my latest book, The Psychology of Bigfoot, it's a guide to understanding Bigfoot claims. And I talk about the mind sometimes, and people will, for those who say I'm, anti-woo, I'm not anti-woo. I'm just trying to get people to better understand the phenomenon versus what's reality and what may more logically occurs. Because I pretty much explain any kind of woo type of theory and explain it to you in common terms that, right, it does sound kind of ridiculous. And I'll explain that in a minute. But first, when the mind sees something like a Bigfoot, it's not expecting to see it, or it's not in the bell tower of somebody. My vocabulary, and all of a sudden there it is. Well, your mind doesn't know what it's looking at. So it has to index it and try to figure it out. Right?
Yes.
That causes time. Hence why we don't have many pictures of a Sasquatch. Right? Because think about it. You're seeing this, oh my God, a Sasquatch. Let me get my phone out. Let me swipe. Let me get to the app. Let me pull the camera, open the app, get her. It's gone. Goodbye. See you later. They don't want anything to do with us. Or that's their defense. It's like, if you're moving around, we're out. See you later. Now, think about if you're not seeing it for the first time, there is something called post-traumatic regression. Happens very common. It's most documented in a couple of instances. Kids who get traumatized as children and in adults when they have auto accidents. If the accident is traumatic, causes an injury or whatever, they forget. The mind makes you forget that incident as a mechanism of defense. So when somebody says, well, it was there and it's suddenly gone, because your mind is, number one, your mind's trying to figure out what's going on. And number two, you may have a little bit of post-traumatic regression going on there. And that makes perfect psychological, scientific sense as to the phenomenon of the Bigfoot just blinking out. Can it blink into an orb in somebody's mind? Yeah, because the mind, again, is in a defensive position. So it may imagine that it turned into an orb. Or the third aspect is that when I did my second book, What Would Sasquatch Do? I discovered that animals of the same animals, and the biggest animals in the families can create a sound called infrasound. And it's a very low ultrasonic, not infrasonic, ultra. So it's below the spectrum, like 2 hertz, under 2 hertz and below. And that sound is so low that we can't hear it as humans, but it causes some strange after effects because the English, the UK, in the UK, they did a study back in the 70s. And what they found out that it caused people to hallucinate. It caused people to hear things or think they're being spoken to, so it can create mind speak. It can get people, the most common denominator of it, people got creeped out. Their hair stood on neck. They got stomach, they got nauseous. They got nervous. They got paranoid. Very similar to what EMF does in the paranormal field.
Yep.
Right? So if somebody gets hit with that, anything they say, do, hear, and say that's out of the ordinary is, could be directly related to that, in addition to all the other aforementioned psychological effects of seeing something that's not in your bell tower or seeing something that's traumatic to you. Because I don't know, coming face to face with something, which is most of these, what I quote unquote woo type of activity happens, is when somebody's really close to one. Well, it's traumatic. It would be traumatic. All of a sudden, now what's your fear factor going to be? Because now, this thing going to rip me apart? Is this thing going to, and all this is going on in your head while, So I think that explains a lot of the so-called paranormal type of aspects of a Bigfoot. Right. Because what I've seen twice and what a lot of people normally have seen is something that's, let's face it, the woo is less reported than even the smell, which is only reported in about 10% of the cases.
Yeah.
So, so something isn't normal one time and then paranormal the next. That's not logical sense, not scientific sense by any means. So the common denominator is the mind. The mind does strange things to people when they see strange things and things they don't understand. We've seen that in active shooter cases where, you do active shooter drills. People may hear a firearm discharge and they're unsure of what it is. The first thing they're trying to figure out, and they're standing around, even though to the trained person who's observed these down or heard these gunshots down the road, they're acting like make it quick. But the people that don't are like standing like deer in the headlight.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Well, first thing you hear people talk about, like in an active shooter scenario, is firecrackers.
Firecracker, or I thought a backfire, or
backfire. Yeah, and so it's really hard. Just take wood knocks. I'm not convinced. Maybe some of them are. But I'm not sure. I'm not convinced that 100% of them are wood knocks. I think a lot of them are,
are mouth pops.
Yeah.
But I will give you something.
We know primates do that. We know primates do, and it's very, very loud.
But primates also knock wood on trees too. Chimpanzees
exactly.
do that.
Exactly.
So
they really hit rocks together, the whole 9 yards. So it could be,
any of the
smattering of everything.
Yep.
But I don't think we can assume that every time we hear a knock that it's a wood knock.
Well, I'll give you a great example, and for the northern states, not so much Texas, but is that I used to go outside and I would hear outside of my old home over in Saratoga County, New York, and I would walk out and I would hear a tree knock. It sounded like a tree knock. You hear that nice big robust sound, and that tree is only about 30, 40 feet away from me, and I can look and there's nothing there. Why did it pop? Well, it's 22 degrees out. It's 25 degrees out. So when it gets below freezing, what happens is that the wood will expand and contract over time. And when it gets really cold, it starts to contract and it starts popping. Right? So even though it may be slight, it'll pop pretty loud. So one of the litmus tests I do is, we heard a tree knock. What's the temperature? And thank goodness for smart watches and phones that we always have our temperature on. Okay, it's X amount of degrees out. The last tree knock I ever heard was it was in 48 degree weather, so it was well above what could have caused that. And it was just a single knock. And about 20 minutes later, me and Tactical Bigfoot Research Mike Ann and I were out, and about 25 minutes later, we get a rock thrown at us. Drops right at the feet. You can actually hear it coming through the woods. We were live casting at the time. Yeah. So that that's weird. That's really weird. But yeah, I agree that, it could be a mouth pop. It could be something else. It could be popping, beating its chest. It could be knocking on a tree. We just don't know. Yeah.
We've ran into what we always called it the 500-pound woodpecker. And it's just extremely loud, and it's got a certain cadence and everything. It's a pop, 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 pop. And there was a couple of us out, and one of the guys, Barry Brown, was out, and we had left, and he sent me a video because you got to check this out. And when I got home, I opened it up, and it was a silverback beating his chest. Sounded the exact same. I'm like, the cadence was right. I mean, everything. And I'm like, oh crap!
No doubt, man, no doubt. It's like, things that make you go, huh? And you see that's the other thing too is Bigfoot, I believe, jumps through portals. Well, what scientific fact do we have for that? And most people are basing it on the belief that they're elusive. Well, that's why we can't find them. No, well, that's insane, because I can go out and look for a raccoon in my backyard. I know they're out there. I've caught them on trail camera before, but I can go look and not find one. And, and rarely do I get them on trail camera.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot more raccoons in the United States than there are Bigfoot. We know that.
Right.
Same thing with the deer. I can't go walking in the woods and find a deer hanging about, but every once in a while they'll show up. Of course, New York has over 1 million deer in their population. So, for the jumping, I mean, we talked about, Kristen and I talked about that earlier too, is you're driving down the road, there's a deer crossing the road, jumps into the woods, you look, it's gone. Mm-hmm. You know, it's acclimated for its environment. Mm-hmm. It knows how to use its environment. It's not superhuman. It's just really dang good at being in the forest, and because that's its home. And it's not that we've lost our most.
I'm sorry. Most of that to me is I'm in total agreement with you here. You know, 2 steps into the brush and you're gone, and all you have to do is take a couple of steps into the brush and be still.
Right.
That's all it is.
Exactly. And we're dealing with the primate mind. You know, I've had hunters who come up with saying, "Oh, well, you know, I've been hunting for how many years? Well, what are you looking for? Tell me what Bigfoot sign is." Well, tracks. Not always. I mean, you track deer. How often do you find deer tracks? No, you're looking at the way the brush is broken, the size of the game trail, where the tree breaks are. Same thing with a Sasquatch. When you track one, I've had sightings where where I've gone and taken the statements. They've taken me to the area. And they said, well, it was standing over here, and I've tracked it down to the roadway where it disappears after that. And there's all the tree breaks there, tree break, and you see the parting of the brush as you're going through. You're getting a track? No, it's New York. New York has a lot of slate and granite and hard substrate, so you don't really get a heck of a lot of tracks all the time. The Bigfoot portal, it's kind of like the same thing too. It's okay, if it's using a portal, it's got to be smart, right? Mm-hmm. So the same thing if Bigfoot's an alien, and we've heard people, I think they're from. Well, just because there is one activity going on, and we all know. I mean, for people that don't know, I was a paranormal investigator too. I investigated the paranormal from 2010 through 2019. I was a demonologist as well.
Mm-hmm. You and I talked about that.
Yep. And so it's not that I don't believe in the paranormal. I don't, it's like, I just think that they're 2 separate phenomena, and sometimes 2 separate phenomena can collide. If the UFOs or UAPs are studying us, they could be studying other animals on the planet. Wouldn't it be kind of smart for them to be studying something that's close to us, or probably the closest to us? I mean, but let's think about this. If this is an intelligent creature, would you be dropped off in a hostile environment that's got ticks, fleas, chiggers, gnats, mosquitoes, black flies, deer flies? Would you get dropped off naked?
Heck no, I hope not.
Makes no sense, right? With no technology, not even a lunchbox, right? Mm-hmm. Right. So, and think about all the other Bigfoot behaviors. I mean, Bigfoot's by creeks, sometimes seen, scooping water or eating plants or catching a fish or doing a bunch of other things. Reports of them walking off with deer. They were intelligent, being dropped off. I mean, do we send astronauts to the moon with nothing, or do we send them, au natural? No. But the other great thing about Bigfoot not being an alien or of alien origin is if we ourselves got dropped off to a planet that we could breathe the air, could we do it? Well, we could, but chances are probably a month later we would drop dead because we're not immune to the bacteria of that planet or the viruses of that planet. Mm-hmm. We have no natural immunity to that. Mm-hmm. So
for sure. Wow. You got me thinking.
Right. So it just wouldn't work out.
Yeah, he asked me that question last year, and I was like, oh, sure, yeah, I'd go to a new planet. And then he explained to me what would happen, and I was like, okay, maybe I wouldn't. No, forget it. I'll stay where I'm at.
Remember when the Europeans first came to North America, they wiped out a good percentage of the Native American tribes because they had no immunity to smallpox.
There you go. Yeah.
And that's a big reason why the Indian government doesn't want outsiders on Sentinel Island. I don't know if you've ever heard of Sentinel Island, but it's this literal piece of land that has this native tribe on there, Aboriginal tribe on there, that has been untouched as far as we've known in history. And every once in a while, there is an idiot that'll go on the island, and they end up getting bow and arrowed.
Wow.
And the reason why they don't want them on there is because we can introduce viruses and bacteria to them that they have no immunity to.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah, definitely. What do you think about and I've been out in the woods, obviously, I don't say, oh, it's a Sasquatch, but just last year I was camping and I heard like a big tree fall and it was like late in the night. What do you think about claims people say, they jump to right that it's a Bigfoot? I was thinking in my head, I was like, yeah, it could be a Bigfoot. However, this is the middle of the woods, trees die all the time,
So part of my book covers about confirmation bias.
Mm-hmm.
If you go in there, if you go into the woods wanting to see and wanting to hear a Bigfoot so badly,
mm-hmm.
And you don't have your filter on it. And of course, as an investigator, you learn to not have, have no biases when you go into an investigation.
Yeah.
Because you don't know where it's going to go. That's crime. I got to solve it. Which way is it going to go? Left, right, up, down? I don't know. So you can't have any precognitions. And just because, this guy it looks really good for it doesn't necessarily mean he is it.
Sure.
The same thing with this is, okay, you hear a tree fall in the woods.
Mm-hmm.
What evidence do you have it's a Bigfoot? None, zip, zing. So why jump to that conclusion?
Yeah.
And what that is just sometimes psychologically, especially when we need to confirm our biases, we will jump to that conclusion because we so badly want to prove it's real.
Right.
Right. Oh, or you want to feel that you've had this special experience when in reality, what you heard was a tree falling down. There's a lot of trees that die in the woods. Mm-hmm. It's just part of the natural progression.
Right.
Trees fall all the time.
Right.
It doesn't necessarily matter even if there's a wind. Sometimes that one little piece can just rot out and starts a chain
mm-hmm.
reaction. It may hit another tree, which is why I'm not really big on a lot of tree structures or people saying this stuff falls all the time. I've been tromping through woods, for the better part of 26 years now.
Yeah.
And I've seen plenty of tree breaks and tree falls and stuff like that there's no reported Bigfoot activity anywhere. As a matter of fact, right over there's a 7-Eleven or a store or a convenience store. It's like, it just happens.
Yeah.
And people will go into the woods and look around and say, oh my goodness, this has got to be Bigfoot. You know what? Find a little plot of woods behind a convenience store where there's no Bigfoot. You're going to see a lot of the same things in those woods.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's,
we were camping out and Gary Spock Sr.'s in the chat and he was with us. And we were just sitting in camp and this big oak tree, I think it was an oak, I'm not sure. But this thing was that big around and it wasn't like it was dead, but it just snapped off about 10 feet up, and I mean, we saw it, and it was like, yeah, man, that's cool, but it was like, what happened?
Because it looks good on the outside, but you don't know what's going on the inside.
Exactly. But now, I mean, there was a lot of activity, but I was watching it the entire time. I heard it start, and I was just sitting there watching this thing, and it just.
Now, if you're getting vocals and there's an area there's a lot of traction, you're hearing things walking around, and then the tree comes
mm-hmm.
down. All right, then I'll give that the benefit of the doubt.
Right.
But if you're sitting there and all you hear all night long is a tree come down, what did you hear? A tree come down.
Right. Totally agree.
It's the same thing with stick structures and stuff like that. People go in the woods and go, oh, look at this rock structure or look at this tree structure.
Yeah.
And, that's something a person could have done. That's something nature could have done in certain cases. if you're not seeing a Bigfoot doing it, don't just leap to that. Just don't jump. It's Bigfoot. It takes a little more than that. And what it is, and it's number one, it's a mistraining of people. I think over the years, people have seen little excerpts and then they get this idea because of a TV show that this means Bigfoot all the time. And it doesn't, right? Yeah. Yes, there are tree breaks that are Bigfoot, but there's plenty more tree breaks. For every tree break that's a Bigfoot, I can show you probably about 1,000 that are not Bigfoot.
Mm-hmm.
People.
We have a friend, and we've had him on the show. It's Bear County Bigfoot, Rod Nichols.
Yes, Rod. Yep.
Okay, he has showed us pictures of some of his structures that he has come across, and like, oh my God, that they're just fantastic. Have you seen his pictures?
I have. They're interesting, very fascinating. But like I say, anytime, even by his own admission, we need to get more. We need to get more to prove that this conclusively is a Bigfoot.
Yeah.
He doesn't make any great claims that look what Bigfoot did.
Right.
He's like, this is interesting. This is what we need to look at, for this. But you got to find that other supporting evidence. You do have a big game trail nearby that would support a Bigfoot. If you're in the middle of the woods and there isn't a piece of ground that isn't flattened down by an 8-foot, 450 plus pound beast walking around. If there's no sign of one walking around, how can you say that's Bigfoot? If there's no tracks, how can you say that's Bigfoot?
Right.
If there's no hair, how can you say that's Bigfoot? The only thing that you're saying it's Bigfoot is confirmation bias.
Yeah.
And that's what you have to avoid.
Absolutely. William Bays has a quick question, real quick. He said, what about when a tree is turned upside down and rammed into the ground?
Did you see Bigfoot do it?
That's true.
There's a lot of strange things that happen. Straight line winds. A tree can fall out, hit another tree, and spin over that tree and plant itself. And after a few years, that tree that fell over can rot away. So there's an explanation for any possibility. That can happen just as much as a Bigfoot could have done it, just as much as somebody, decided, hey, let's plant this tree upside down. But yeah,
playing devil's advocate here, Steve. When does it become? And I've used this before. When does it stop being a coincidence? Like, so when do, in your mind, when does something like that, like Krista was just talking about, when do you look at something and go, I don't have any other explanation? Something that's going to take, you look at something and it's like, this hadn't taken opposable thumb. There were no other humans around, and that for a fact. You don't. And it is an active area. What is.
So it's a good reason why serial killing profilers, they get rotated every 18 months. Right. It's people come to these conclusions because they don't want to be frustrated. Right. So that frustration can lead to madness. So they find an answer that's, it's got to be better. Well, how do we know a UFO didn't do that?
Right.
Right. There's been UFO sightings in the county? I bet you there have been. So why couldn't a UFO be examining a tree and drop it? Why do we go to Bigfoot when there's no Bigfoot sign? Now, if there's tracks around and there's look at there. There's an actual castable track that we know there's 5 toes on this, or there was a sighting nearby, a recent sighting. Then we have a little more to build upon.
Yeah.
Right.
But how do we know a ghost didn't do that, or a demon didn't do that, or a UFO didn't do that? Nobody saw anybody do this.
Right.
The default should not be Bigfoot, right? So, a person looking for UFOs in the area might say, that tree's upside down. It had to be a UFO. Why? Because they have a confirmation bias for UFOs. So you've got to understand how the mind works when it comes to doing these. And you got to, we got a tree. It is what it is. We got a tree up. It's rammed into the ground. Can't explain it. We'll have to, take some pictures. Maybe go to a scientist, go to a biologist, go to an ecologist and say, hey, can you explain this?
And that's or an arborist. I would love to see, and that's something nobody has ever done. I don't think has talked to somebody that's in this specialized field. How do you explain this happening?
The 99%, 99, I guarantee 99% of the time somebody sees that and they put it up on Facebook and say, oh, look, Bigfoot. No, not Bigfoot. You haven't asked the right people about it. I haven't come across that, but I haven't come across that particular phenomenon. But if I did, I'd be taking pictures and sending them out to NCON saying, my son is a ranger. I'd be like, what the hell is this?
Right.
Gotcha.
So before
I think a lot of people, if they they've got these evidence, even these photos that they think may be a Bigfoot, these tree structures and all this kind of stuff. I think if we would take, and I'm just as guilty as anybody else, if we would take the time to approach a forest ranger, a wildlife biologist, an arborist, that type of thing, and not tell them anything, just show them the picture and go, what is this?
Can you explain it? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Exactly. I don't know what am I looking at here? And get there, because if you go, hey, I'm a Bigfoot guy, what do you do? Can you see it? No, you don't want to do that.
Right.
And that's and that's why, and I hate getting, and I know this is one of your favorite subjects too. And I've pretty much, I think, ruined everybody I talk to on that's even part of my team. I think I've turned everybody against red circles.
There are certain times that red circles are acceptable, though. Mm-hmm. For example, if I see a Bigfoot moving in the woods and I get my camera and I take a picture of that, and it turns out to be a crappy picture, because let's face it, digital cameras are not meant to take pictures in the forest. Again, that's a whole nother chapter in Bigfooting. It's always going to focus on that nearest thing. Well, when there's a picture of potentially one, I'm not going to poo-poo it because a person has had a visual sighting of it too. Right. That's different. What I consider blob squatches are people just taking random pictures and going, oh, look, there's a Bigfoot, there's a Bigfoot. I've seen pictures on Facebook, which is with as many as 27 red circles in it. So Bigfoot there on the ground. I'm like, this person is insane.
Mm-hmm. Brandy and I did a experiment, and we posted. It was a year ago. I went camping where I heard the tree fall. Went camping, and I went to, there's a place called Alley Springs. Lots of people around it, but it looked like it was deserted. It was just a picture of a creek, and I took a picture, and I posted it in our Facebook group. And I went and I posted it in our Facebook group, and I said, what do you see? I never gave any leading questions, nothing. And you would not believe all of the people that said, the Bigfoot, the Dogman, and things like that. There was people all around. And I'm telling you, people, there wasn't anything there, but human.
It's pareidolia, right? Pareidolia and confirmation bias is what it is. People want to believe so bad. And I'm telling people, hey, it's okay to believe. Absolutely. Don't believe in everything. Even question your own stuff. I've questioned my own. In fact, my second sighting, I was convinced I didn't see what I saw. Mm-hmm. My second sighting, I was like, no, I didn't see that. Until the next morning when other things came to light that I wasn't bringing up, but the other people I was with who were bringing up. But you need to question everything, when you're saying, and question yourself. It's okay. Yeah. And the problem is there are, and there is a certain element that want to post everything on Facebook right away. Mm-hmm. And as a professional investigator, I know, people like, how can you not say this about somebody? Or, people are really quick to, oh, come on, this is a hoax. Why aren't you saying it's a hoax? Because I don't have the evidence yet. Let me work on that. Only when that's any investigation, come out and say, well, I think this guy did it without the evidence, right? Right. You may have a suspect, but you're not going to, or you may be suspecting something, but you're not going to announce that till it's done. And investigations take time. Truth always tends to come out over time.
Mm-hmm.
That's why when you have like the Patterson-Gimlin film,
You just put that video out. I saw that.
right? You know, it hasn't, and there's no, you know, it's a good story, and nothing's really come out over in time. We have this guy Bob Hieronymus, which has no direct ties to the film, and that these interlopers that are making claims that they can't prove. Because can anybody show me a picture of Bob Hieronymus with Bob Gimlin and Roger Patterson on a photo at any time in 1967? No, right? So you kind of like got to look at that kind of thing. Though there's an issue there. There's no evidence whatsoever he was with them. Just what he says, and the skeptics want to just grab onto that and latch onto it again. Confirmation bias too. Skeptics can be victims of confirmation bias as well.
Yeah.
And that's another point I make in the book, that you can have something that's completely ridiculous and they'll latch onto it, like the Hieronymus story. Like Hieronymus' story changed over a period. The first 6 months, it changed. It evolved into something different. None of the skeptics will ever talk about that. They'll never say, well, yeah, that's true. Philip Morris, this guy, says he made the suit. And they try to get Morris and Hieronymus together. That's what Greg Long did in his book. And I got a gnat here for some reason. And it's, it's like,
in your space, right? Yeah.
Yeah, because I got all the studio lights on. But Bob, I mean, so he gets with Bob Hieronymus, and they try to do this big deal where it was Morris's suit and Hieronymus wore it, but the suit that Hieronymus described was not the same suit Morris described. Well, no, the skeptics never try to fetter that one out, and again, that's evidence of confirmation bias, is that they don't believe in the film, so they're going to latch on anything that will confirm their bias that the film is fake. So you got to be, the more as researchers and even enthusiasts, we are aware of that, the farther we will take the ball down the field. Because then we'll start making observations that make sense rather than trying to make, focus on these innocuous things that make no sense.
Right. No, that makes sense. What about the guy? Didn't Bob Gimlin or someone, now I could be wrong, correct me on this. Didn't somebody work for like a costume or something like that?
No, Patterson and Gimlin had nothing to do with costumes. Philip Morris was a guy who ran a costume company on the East Coast. And all of a sudden, after Hieronymus came out, he's like, oh, that's my suit. I knew it back then. Well, if he knew it back then, why didn't he save the Roger Patterson receipt? Right. Seriously, it's gone. But just to show you this guy's honesty, he's now deceased, but he got sued successfully. He got sued for copyright infringement for making foul Barney costumes.
Gotcha.
Back in the Barney days. So that ran him a lot of money and a lot of trouble for a while.
Barney took him down.
Yep.
Backstage we were talking about Dogman. Let's jump over to that.
I think personally, Dogman is a paranormal manifestation rather than a cryptid one. And the reason why I say that is just because anatomically, biologically, the way it walks does not make the structure of the legs doesn't make any sense for a terrestrial creature that's bipedal. The back legs on a dog are meant to be the backside of a quadruped, not a two-legged creature. So people that see this like, oh, well, it had dog feet and no. No, that won't make sense, because that would be think about how skinny the legs are there, and that would make it, not great for climbing rocks or navigating rocks. But as a legs 3 and 4, they would work just fine.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. What about like people that say that they are seeing, with what you said, that's why, they could very well be on the paranormal side, because people say they see them a lot around cemeteries and, things like that.
Yeah. I mean, there is a lot of, is there a certain percentage that maybe a Bigfoot that's misidentified? Yes. Is there a certain percentage that maybe a regular animal that's misinterpreted? Yes. Is there a percentage that's paranormal? Yes. So I think it's all the above, but I don't think.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. Tito says Bigfoot that chased and followed me on my family's 600-acre ranch in Northern California could cloak. It was not all just in my mind. I could hear and see the footfalls by the loose dirt. Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry, but I think you might be going through some post traumatic, because you're saying that it chased you and followed you, so I'm sure it was traumatic. So I'm sure there was times that it may have gotten a little. There may be some regression there. Maybe maybe it was something else you were hearing nearby, and the Bigfoot peeled off. That's happened before. Believe me, I've been chased by, or not chased, but I've been stalked by 2 Sasquatch at one time, I believe. It was at the height of our, it was before my sightings, but it was in that same time period. And I walked down with another researcher, and something was walking on both sides of the trails of us. It doesn't mean it was closed, right? And believe it or not, I have also been to Plymouth, Mass. And when I was in Plymouth, Mass, I was conducting a little paranormal investigation. I actually went to where the gallows were, where they hung the witches.
Oh, wow.
It's not marked on any map. You have to do a little bit of digging, a little bit of research, and they're just off a basketball court.
Really?
Sound, yeah. In fact, there's a strange concrete structure monument there, really, not marked. And it was called Gallows Hill. And up there, not only we get EVPs, but we actually caught on the recorder something walking around.
Oh, wow.
Right in front of us. We could actually see the leaves moving. Doesn't mean it was a cloaked Bigfoot. Doesn't mean it was paranormal. So perhaps maybe in a high state of excitement that you evoked something paranormal, or maybe the experience wasn't a Bigfoot, maybe it was something manifesting that way. There's a lot of different explanations, but
yeah. She says that the dogs ran past me instead of greeting me and chased away whatever was following me.
Okay, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And then again, there'd be a lot of times too, after we've had a Bigfoot, we hear these movements going in large, and then we hear these little rustles.
Yeah.
Like, is it moving around on us? Is it? And we would actually see leaves move.
Yeah.
I pull out my FLIR, it's a field mouse.
Right.
So, and that was right nearby the Bigfoot falls that were coming with the dark figure. Yeah. So there are times when, you can have multiple things going on that can cause you to think other things are going on, because now if the Bigfoot's stalking you, there can be panic in you. Think about it. You're being stalked. I remember that one time I was down there, and this thing must have came within maybe 4 or 5 feet of the forest edge, where it's just about ready to come out. And I'm in complete dark, and I got just a little bit of light looking up there, and you could hear,
yeah.
And the next thing you know, it stopped, and I was like, and that was probably the most panicked I was like, it's going to come walking right out in the open, and it didn't. But that's what they do. Hang out right at the forest edge.
Yeah. What do you think about people who are bluff charged? Do you think that's Bigfoot, or do you think that could be ghosts?
Absolutely bluff charges. Bluff charges are real. Diane Fossey was bluff charged. Chimpanzees will bluff charge too. Primates too. I mean, even us as humans, think about it. How many times have you been in a fight or near a fight, and somebody's like, they're trying to puff up. It's all part of the bluff charge mentality. It's our primate nature. It's the
any just about. I go out on a limb. I think every animal.
Well, yeah,
even down to reptiles and everything. When you get into the mating aspect of it and everything, that a lot of it, and I've talked about this before. It's they would rather bluff each other than fight each other.
Yeah.
You know, fighting each other
Bears,
really is, you know,
Bears
last
bluff
resort.
charge too. Yeah,
Yeah.
Bears bluff charge. Believe it or not, a lot of people don't know this, but a skunk will bluff charge before it sprays.
Huh. I did not know
It will
that.
actually, it will stomp its paws at you and look at you. Its tail will go up and it'll stomp its paws. And then if you start irritating, it'll just turn around and but because
They'll
the
stand
skunk
up on
will
their
actually,
front. They'll stand up on their front legs and stick their
Yep.
their butt up in the air too.
Yep. Yeah,
Wow.
they'll charge and threaten you before doing it, because when a skunk discharges,
Yeah.
it takes 9 to 11 days for that to recharge, so they lose their defense. So that's
wow.
why they rarely do it.
I didn't know that it takes that long for it to come back.
And the funny thing is I remember one time living in the city, because there's more skunks near cities than there are out in the wild. I think I'm sitting out there having a smoke one day on my back porch when I was living down in the city of Troy, and all of a sudden I look down, oh, here comes a cat. It wasn't, it was a skunk.
Oh,
And he walked right by me. I looked down at him, he looked up at me. I was like, how you doing? He was like, just kept on walking. Wasn't afraid of me, didn't threaten me, didn't care I was there. I didn't make any moves. I just looked at him, how you doing?
wow.
And he was like, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, that's crazy. Let's move over and talk about some paranormal stuff. Let's talk along the demonology line. I've studied demonology myself, and
I was just on another show, and I actually kind of skated away talking, not really wanting to talk about it too much. But over the weekend, though, I've had some discussions with my teammates from my paranormal team, and we're still a team. We're just not active, and I've seen a lot of strange things. And when I started in the paranormal, one of the things that I saw that I didn't like was I belonged to a group that they dealt with something that was very demonic case. The family had seen levitations. There was a lot of negative feelings. There was things going on. We went into that house, and some of the weirdest evidence I've ever caught. And a ghost box session where I think I'm making way with something, and we felt that maybe something was holding the spirit in the house back, something demonic. And we started saying, what is the name of what's holding you back? And all of a sudden we get this female voice on the ghost box. It's just called that's it, freaks. What the hell was that? And they're like, listen, don't listen to her. Talk to us. She's been talking to us, saying your name and saying blah blah blah. What it is. And then all of a sudden the woman's voice came back and said goodbye. Now the ghost box went silent after that. We couldn't get to say anything. Now, mind you, we were recording off that. And as a paranormal investigator, you tag your recorder when you start it, you tag it when you stop. So, all right, try it for another 20 minutes. Nothing. I pick up the recorder. I'm like, okay, tag it, time, hit the stop, take it back to review it. You know when the recording stopped is after it said goodbye. When I tagged it and shut it off, electronic manipulation.
Yeah. Wow.
So, but here's the thing, that the family, this group did not deal with the demonic, and I wasn't a demon. I was new at this. And there was a lot of weird stuff. Like, I mean, we got a probably beach ball sized orb when somebody took a picture of 3 of us just standing in the kitchen.
Wow.
Superimposed over us.
Yeah.
Like, what could have caused that? And that was on a film camera.
Yeah.
So
we don't honestly, we don't have to talk about like the actual demonic, because I mean,
when I will say this, is eventually my stories will come out about that, and my team stories will come out about that. But what I ended up doing was forming my own group, and we were going to not let these people hang. And I did a lot of studying for a couple of years, and got ordained by an old holy Catholic priest. And he was basically my advisor. And he, I remember the first time we needed to do a deliverance on a house. He's like, "Go ahead, you're ordained. You can do it. Go." Okay. And did a few, did a couple of those, very rarely. But again, we were getting called by groups that were like, we can't deal with this. Can you come in and mitigate it? And but I will say this is that when you start doing that, you're picking a fight with a team too. The demonic communicate with one another. The second time I ever dealt with demonic, again, this is just about before I was ready to leave my first team. And there was this guy that was running this. He was part of the group, but he was trying to start his own group. And a lot of evil attached to that person, around that person, I think.
Yeah.
And he wanted to do this old motel. Now, the problem with this old motel is that's where a lot of the paroled sex offenders went to live before it closed down. So there was some really bad
energy there anyway. Yeah.
That was the first time I heard my full name, my first name and my last name on the ghost box.
Yeah, that's creepy to me. I don't like hearing my name.
And I said, well, you know who I am. What am I? Now, before I was actually officially ordained, I was a fire department chaplain. I was a chaplain fire. I would do the prayers and stuff like that. And it turned around and said, well, who am I? And I knew that. So being a chaplain, you're always a target, regardless if you're doing it or not. And I said, well, you know who I am? And it said priest. And everybody just looked like, oh. One of the girls got burned on behind the ear. Just felt the burning. She had a big red mark on her welt on her neck. Done. Let's get out of here. Done. The next day, that girl's chicken coop at her farm burned for no reason. Burned up.
Wow.
So that was my first real tangle, and that was after that house we had done. So I'm like, all right. So now I got mad, and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna, and that's how I got into it. But the last one I did was a culmination, and likely it will be the subject of a book. And it's going to be such an interesting story. It could go to a movie. It's that wild of a story. What we saw, what we experienced that day was on the level I have never seen before. When you have
I think I remember you telling me this story.
When you have two 200-pound plus police officers holding down a 16-year-old girl under possession, and they're struggling with her.
Yeah.
Trying to get it in my throat while I perform the exorcism. Pretty scary stuff.
Absolutely.
To the point, and what happened afterwards. Because once that was successfully done, and it took about 4.5, 5 hours to get it done. Once that was done, she's back. We spend another hour making sure she's okay, back to normal. We leave, and we get about 5 miles away. Like, okay, let's stop off. We'll gas up the cars, get some beverages, and head home. And the little caravan of 3 cars pull into the gas station, and the phone rings. And it's the girl that we just took care of. Says, you got to come back. There's something wrong with my mom.
It jumped.
Yeah.
It did. Yeah. And we know why it jumped, because the mother asked her to. So the damnedest thing you'd ever say. To the point where people don't understand that when I started getting into this, I dealt with a demonic case, and I ended up getting welts on my neck. I should say boils on my neck, the size of golf balls.
Wow.
It was so bad that, okay, fine, I got these welts. I start getting antibiotics. They clear. The following week, I end up getting what they considered was hives, but they weren't bumps. My whole arm looked like a spotted leopard.
Wow.
Just red blotches everywhere. It looked like a leopard pattern almost. Another demonic case, I did a deliverance. And I developed, 2 weeks later, I developed Bell's palsy. Doctor's like, I don't know why you have Bell's palsy, but it happens. So let me give you the antiviral. It's probably a middle ear infection. It should be, and it went away. Thank God I noticed it when I did. And I noticed it as soon as the onset was on. I might have been a mini stroke, and then I had a doctor tell me how you can tell the difference of that, but that's another story. So when I do my follow up, about a month, 2 months later, I talked to the girl I did deliverance with. I said, "Are you okay? Is everything all right?" She says, "Yeah, I've been fine with the exception of one strange thing." She's about 2 weeks after you did deliverance, I got Bell's palsy.
Wow. Yeah.
Which side? He goes, the left side. Mine was on the left side too.
Wow.
So you want to talk about all these really weird coincidences.
Absolutely.
I went to the Hinsdale house twice.
Ooh, that house is bad.
Actually, I've been there a total of, I think, 5 times.
Wow.
And the first 2 times, remember the boils on my neck? 3 days after I came back from Hinsdale house, I ended up getting a boil under each of my armpits.
Ugh.
Oh.
And that, painful. And my doctor's going, I don't understand. I can understand one side, but he goes, I don't get it. And that happened to me twice. And then the third time I went there, it was fine. But
wow. You know, speaking of the Hinsdale house, that's an evil house, I believe. And Daniel, who owns the house now, did you hear about his daughter?
I did.
Do you think that has anything to do with that house?
I would rather not speculate on that.
Gotcha. I understand.
All I know is that my dealings with dealt with a lot of inane, pestering medical issues. Not issues that were like, okay, I have high blood pressure. Yep. So does half my family. I have type 2 diabetes. Yep. My grandmother had full-blown diabetes. So who knows? But these other little ailments, they were devastating yet minute and minor. Right? Things that would upset your day, ruining your day. And, and it gets to a point where you start saying, I don't want this to affect my loved ones. I don't want this to affect my pets. Sure. I don't want this to affect anymore. I'm done. I can't deal with it. I'm sorry. Yep. I did my duty. And that's why I have moved away from it.
Right. I know someone too who does deliverances also. And, you were talking about the sicknesses and stuff, and he's actually had like a rattlesnake bites, copperhead bites, and there was no snake around. He was not physically bit, but yet at the hospital, he had no idea, he just felt sick. He couldn't figure out what was going on. And then, he had to have a bunch of anti-venom and all kinds of things, but he was not really bit by a rattlesnake, not a live one, so go figure, and that's the thing with the bad stuff, they lay in wait and they wait until you're vulnerable. And unfortunately, if had I known this before I ever messed with anything demonic the first time, I never would have done it. But you do it one time, you're marked. They all know you. They know everything about you. So my suggestion to people who get into the paranormal, stay away from that negative stuff, man. Just stay away from it. It's not worth it at all. So yeah, for sure.
I won't necessarily say that because it has to be done by somebody.
I agree. It does. But
for me, it was, about 5 years of doing that or 4.5 years of doing that. I'm out for now. I got to take a break.
You did your time. Yeah, you did your time for sure. Let's move on and go ahead, Tex. You're tired.
I'm going to say, those sleeping pills are kicking my butt. I'm so sorry.
Well, very common with me talking to people like.
No, not at all. You're an interesting guy, Steve. I got to tell you.
But yeah, I'm going to have to say my goodnight. So I'm sorry, Christopher, for falling out. I really am.
You're good. Go to bed, Steve. We got this.
Thanks. Good seeing you, brother.
Hey, you too, man. I'll talk to you soon, brother. I'll give you a shout.
Give me a holler. Yep.
Good night, everybody.
Let's maybe move in and talk about something a little lighter. How about paranormal and Bigfooting equipment?
Really, I'm kind of old school when it comes to the paranormal stuff.
Mhm.
I go on a couple of flashlights, maybe a ghost box.
Yeah.
I'm not really big into the that SLR or the
Yeah.
whatever.
Yes.
Yeah, the SLS. That's it. Not really big into that because it doesn't really prove anything to me.
Mhm.
Paranormal was never about proving anything.
Right.
Very big difference in strategies.
Mm-hmm.
When I was doing the paranormal, if I was going to a place, it was more about, if a family needed answers, that was great if we could get them answers. If it was about a touristy site, it was about getting the experience and having some fun.
Mm-hmm.
It was never about, I need to get this proof and put it out there and document it and anything like that. It was like, I'm doing this for me. I'm just wanting to know. I want answers to certain things. I want to see, number one, the phenomenon was real. And the very first investigation I was on, I saw something rather amazing, which really to this day, I still shake in my head. But as far as the Bigfooting stuff, that is a whole nother animal because let's face it, when you do a paranormal investigation, you're usually in a nice environment or a semi-nice environment. You're undercover. You're not getting rained on. You don't have to worry about animals. You don't have to worry about a lot of different things. When you're out doing a Sasquatch investigation, it's multifaceted. There's many disciplines that you have to deal with. You have to deal with survival, camping, knowing the outdoors, tracking, predation signs, scat, tracks, tracking, and again, I can't stress survival enough. You gotta have your proper survival gear. You got to know about navigation and reading maps and how to read a compass. And then that's not even dealing with the equipment that you want to bring in. You want to use trail cameras. What's the proper ratio? How should you hook your trail cameras up? Where should you hook your trail cameras up? Any type of, night vision gear. Then you got thermal gear if you want to have a thermal gear. So, and then if you want to collect evidence, you got to have the proper forensic collection evidence. You got to have a dusting kit. You got to have luminol. You got to have, lifting tape for your if anything puts a hand on a car or a windshield or, a trailer door or whatever. You got to have that equipment there and available for you. I mean, I have buckle swabs and DNA collection tubes and evidence bags and evidence labels. And so there's just so much that, and then, I got to have my off. I got to have my mess kit. I got to have my tent. I got to have my cot. I got to have my sleeping bag. I got to have my tent. I got to, so it's just on and on.
So word to the wise, everybody. This is expensive. Expensive to do.
Right.
Well, I do have to disagree, Steve. I do have to disagree. Ghost hunt. I have had to deal with snakes and raccoons, possums, mice, rats, spiders, you name it, on the inside. It's not that nice. And you might have a roof, you might not.
But
I'm not
I've been there
too.
I've been there too. In fact, what was that show, Fear Factor?
Yeah.
And they actually went to the town I used to live in and went to the, I think the old Saratoga County Asylum.
Oh, wow.
That house had a lot of, and that's in the town I live in. And you wouldn't know it was there unless you knew the right turn to take.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's huge. But there's, you deal with that during investigations. I mean, possums and raccoons and bats and spiders, they don't bother me. Even snakes don't bother me.
Yeah.
What bothers me are bears.
Yeah.
Running unintentionally into a pack of coyotes, because now you go, there's a bunch. Running into a moose.
Yeah.
Moose are more dangerous than bear.
Yeah, we never had to worry about elk, but they've now reintroduced them into our environment here. And now we've got to watch out for them because now they're as close as 15 miles away from me.
And they're not even, and they're almost as bad tempered as moose.
Yeah.
And of course, that's because you're dealing with something that has a brain the size of a walnut. So it doesn't know any better not to mess with the apex predator.
Right. Right.
It's big. It's a big animal, so it thinks it can take
Right.
anything out. I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they don't think of that. How about the Chihuahua that goes after you that thinks he's like a 150 pound?
I know.
But in truth, there is the safety factor is it's a lot more dangerous being out there in the remote looking for a Sasquatch than it is on a ghost hunt, and that's just fact. You're out in the environment, and we're not even talking about weather or there could be rains and all of a sudden, your trail gets washed out or the road you showed up on gets washed out or a tree comes down on the road. Now you're trapped in that environment. What do you do?
Right.
You can say you go up a trail and a tree comes down, or you go up a dirt road and that tree comes down, over that dirt road. Now, hey, how am I going to get out of here? Well, let me get my cell phone. Oh, that doesn't work.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah.
Right. How often do you get out to the woods? Thank you, Two Shadows.
When there is a legitimate reason to, a lot of times, we have a certain time of year that we have Bigfoot activity. It seems more be prevalent towards the end of summer through the very beginning or through the end of fall.
Mm-hmm.
So that seems to be the more active time in my area. It seems like from like mid-August till about the first week of December. And we got a lot of sightings, especially in September and October for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Probably because the leaf cover, once late September hits, early October hits, the leaf cover disappears. So people are able to see more than what they're normally able to do. Right. And I think by December, they move off from the Adirondack Mountains eastward to the Green Mountains in Vermont. There's only about a 25-mile stretch between the two mountain ranges. And the funny thing is the Bigfoot capital of New York, Whitehall, New York, is right in the middle of those two mountain ranges.
Wow. How far is that area from you?
I live in southern Washington County, New York. I live at the very southern tip. Whitehall is at the very northern tip. So it's the same county as I am. It's only, and literally when I started this, it was about an hour and 20-minute drive. Now I'm about 30 minutes.
Oh, wow. Wow.
And it's only about, and as the crow flies, it's probably about 18, 19 miles from where I live.
Wow. That's a hot area.
Okay. So yeah, I'm more in the thick of it now. And I bought a house in Washington County. So it's like, I'm not going anywhere now. This is where I'm at now. Mm-hmm. So that was really a cool thing. So I get out when I can, when it's prudent. Right now, it's starting to get buggy and warm now. So, and there's a lot of touristies and people wandering around because I live near Lake George. Lake George is a big Canadian tourist trap. A lot of Canadians come down to Lake George, which is just on the southern side of Lake Champlain. A lot of people come down there and they get about 3 million tourists a year in Lake George. So it gets a little busy up there on the weekends and stuff and on the weekdays. So I pick my times very selectively when I go up there. And obviously if there's a sighting report, boom, I'm there. But I've been out a few times already this year. I was out in New Hampshire in March for an investigation just before I got ran over by the truck. Actually, it was the day before I got ran over by the truck. I just
want to let everybody know that's literally, not figuratively speaking. That is literally he got hit by a truck
twice.
Yeah, and he's lucky to be here. So it is amazing. It is amazing. But I do have a question for you. Is there any type of equipment that you would use in your paranormal investigations that you would use in your Bigfoot investigations?
Absolutely. It's always good to carry the K2 or an EMF reader. Just good to have. I've taken the Mel meter. I got a Mel meter. I've taken that out with me too, just to see if anything bounces on that. Because that may explain some high weirdness going on.
Yeah. We actually even taken out a REM pod out when we went Bigfooting.
Yeah.
It didn't go off. We didn't have any luck with it, but we had it
but
on.
if you have an EMF emitter, who knows? It can. The one thing we if they're using infrasound, maybe they're using some sort of echolocation. I doubt that. I mean, there's no evidence to support that, but it's okay to throw some ideas out there in the wind to see if they flesh out. But yeah, I mean, anything is on the board. Take what you want to out there and see if anything pops or anything happens that's strange. Because you know what, you may find you're in the woods and it may not be Bigfoot rich, but it may be paranormal rich.
Right. Yes, absolutely. We ran into that several times. But with the REM pods, we figured if we can set them off, maybe Bigfoot can set them off. We figured that much.
But they never went off.
No, I've also repurposed my trail cams because I use them inside during the summer, and they work great.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the equipment, you can use. I mean, you can use IR in a paranormal investigation. You can use night vision in an investigation, and vice versa. I've had my DVR system stationed around my camp, my base camp at night. Turn it on, flick it on, just in case someone decides to come walking in and take a peek.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Yeah.
So you can use that equipment too. If you have, like I have an external battery pack I use. I believe it or not, can power a lot of stuff for about a good 10 to 12 hours, even with no issues at all.
Wow, that's good. That's good because usually you'll get about 6, maybe 8 if you're lucky.
When I went to Kentucky, I was charging my laptop every night, charging my phone every night, charging my gear every night on this little battery box. I was there for 3 nights, and when I left, I still had like 60% left on it. So,
wow.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, no kidding.
Great. Now, have you ever been out in the field where you've had your equipment the battery got zapped, where you just lost everything?
Yeah, and I don't attribute that a lot of times to paranormal. I attribute that to the wonkiness of batteries in general. I mean, I've been out in the woods where things don't work. I've been in paranormal situations where I pull the batteries and they don't work. There's certain
cold could zap your batteries.
Yeah, and certain times, like it's kind of funny. I bought these one type of digital recorders. I bought one digital recorder. I liked it so much. I said, about 6-7 months later, there was a clearance sale on them. I grabbed them. They were little Panasonic digital recorders. And for the life of me, I lost my main one, my first one I bought. But that sucker, I could leave batteries in it, and every time I turn it on, the batteries would be fresh. The other ones, the new ones I bought, I noticed they felt a little bit lighter, a little bit different. If I left batteries in, the batteries would discharge and die.
Huh.
Weird.
Yeah. And but they look identical, but I noticed there was just one number off on them. One was Model A, and the other one was a Model B. They did the same exact thing. They just made them a little cheaper, and that cheaper make made them discharge the batteries on them every time. So I had to take the batteries out of those, and I knew the A one by the feel of it because it was a harder plastic. It was heavier plastic.
Right.
And I was like, okay, this is my good one. And then one day I show up, my good one's gone. I don't know where it went. I haven't found it to this day.
Wow.
Yeah.
Sheldon S. asked, have you done any, I think you meant investigations on Chestnut Ridge?
I have been to Chestnut Ridge. Yep. I do every time I get out to the Pennsylvania Bigfoot camping adventure. I mean, there's another one this September. Run by Eric Altman out on, and it's at Benner's Meadows Field, which is right at the base of the Chestnut Ridge. And then at night we go out and we take people out on the Chestnut Ridge and we investigate. I got a thermal of a bear out there.
Oh, that's cool.
Well, we thought it was a Bigfoot at first because we hear stomp, stomp, stomp. I pull up the FLIR, I look, and here's this tall figure standing there. And I'm like, I don't know why it's standing there looking at us. And then all of a sudden it dropped, and then I could see it ungulate away. It was a bear just standing up looking around. And
oh, wow.
He was watching us, and then said, okay, time to get out of here, and he boogied. Yeah.
That's really cool, though. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I I wanted to go back a little bit. I was kind of like behind the screen because this internet is on and off, on and off. But what I wanted to say to you is kind of agree with you some when you see something like a Bigfoot and your brain is trying to wrap itself around what you're looking at. Because I've said this even when Chris and I had our experience, our encounter, and I'm looking at it. The first thing I said to myself, is that a person? Second thing was a bear. And then it's like, there we go. It's a Sasquatch.
Yeah, your mind, like I said, your mind is reverting to what it's seen before. And,
right. I had to just like process that, you know, and my encounter was like kind of a long one. It was about 45 seconds worth of what I was looking at.
That was my first one. It was about 40 seconds.
Yeah. And it's like, but I'm sitting here and the whole time is like, I'm not thinking about my phone at first. I'm trying to figure out what I'm looking at. The second thing was, you know, if I pick up my phone, the light's going to come on. So yeah, I didn't want to do that either.
So my first one, I actually put a light on it, and it was about 100 feet away, and the eyes were shining back. That's why I believe they have a tapetum lucidum, which is the reflective mechanism in the eye that gives cat's eye shine and deer eye shine, all that. It makes them see a lot of. They absorb more light so they can see better in the dark, is what I'm saying. But anyway, I just froze, and I saw, I'm like, oh, and it's blinking. I could see the eyes blinking and how I ended it was just I shook my light a little bit, and it just turned and it walked into the wood line. And you know, once you make that move, it's gone. It's going. I think it was surprised to see me standing there, kind of put a light on, like and it froze. Like if I move, it's going to see me, and I'm the same way. Like I see it, but I'm not going to move because it'll scare it. And I said, finally, after like, okay, this is ridiculous, I moved the light a little bit and off it went. But in reality, I really believe that it was probably just waiting to see what I did before it decided to take a move. And once I moved that light, okay, I'm not going to take the chance. It sees me. I'm out of here.
Right.
I think that was, you know, as a primate, you know, and people got to understand too, is that these things don't think like a deer or a wolf or a bear. They think like a primate, like us. And primates are very intelligent. They have abstract thought, and you know, they can problem solve. Even not like they can walk away from a scene and think about it and try to problem solve it and come back and fix it. Jane Goodall talked about that in Chimps and the Mugambi about a chimpanzee. They were trying to see if it would problem solve. And finally, on the last day, they were just about ready to give up. It came right in there and solved the problem without even taking a second to do it. So it had been thinking about the problem while it was outside of the area. So kind of proved that they can think about the scenario in their head. So and the way I think about it is that, you know, there's a lot of people that will argue, well, maybe it's a person. Maybe it's like us. No, it does not have the same DNA as us. Let's put that one to rest right now. They're not a tribe of lost people. They're not wild. They're fellow human beings because their foot structure is different. Their neck structure is different. Their head structure is different. Their facial features are different, and they're covered in hair. What that all means is their DNA is different.
Sure.
Especially with the foot structure. I mean, you want anything. I mean, their foot, you know, their foot, and this is another 101 guide to looking at real tracks versus wrong tracks, is that if you ever see a footprint and has an arch, it's not a Bigfoot, not a Sasquatch. They are flat-footed. They have a mid-tarsal break. They don't have an arch. They don't have a ball of the foot they pivot on. And also, if you ever see a foot that's crooked, a lot of times you'll see people with these casts. You'll see toes and you'll see the bend. Well, that's not. How can something walk naturally like that with a bent foot like that? What that is actually a bear overstep. The bear steps in, steps up, steps in. So as the foot, that's a bear overstep. That's really easy to spot. But with the foot structure being different, that means their bone structure is different. That means their DNA is different. And so that notion is just kind of like, it's something people like to what I find is if it's not confirmation bias, it's romanticism almost. And that's something we call anthropocentrism, where we attribute a lot of human characteristics to animals. Like, look, the dog's smiling at me. Or, the dog has learned how to do that because it's mimicking us.
Yeah.
It's not truly like, oh, I'm happy, I'm going to smile. It's mimicking us. So maybe it'll find certain circumstances where it gets rewarded for it too. Like my guy will smile at me when he wants a cookie, But look, it's playing peekaboo with us. No, it's not really playing peekaboo. That's something, So it's like these. So we tend to put these anthropocentric terms on Bigfoot, especially since it looks a lot like us. Meaning that really the only thing that looks a lot like us is its walks. It walks like us. Its feet are similar to us. It's 5 toes. It doesn't have like that opposable big toe that the other great apes have.
Right.
And that's the only real difference between, that's the only similarity really between us and them is that it walks upright. Nothing else is the same. It's got longer arms. It's got hair. It's got different facial structure. It's got different brow ridge. It's got no ears. So I don't know how people jump to, it's an ancient tribe of people. It's an ancient tribe of Native Americans. No, it's not. It's something completely different. It weighs more than us. It's taller than us. It's bigger than us. So its bone density would have to be thicker than ours. I mean, it's all these. So that's another thing. So when you start seeing people posting about, they don't use fire. We know they don't use fire. They don't use complicated or manufactured tools. They use simple tools, sticks, rocks. So they're nothing like us, but they are primates. Now, are they related to us, or structurally are they more hominin than they are pongid? I don't know. I don't know at this point where it necessarily falls, but we do know it's primate because the definition of a primate's articulate hands and feet, large brain, forward-facing eyes, small snout. But that gives us a lot of knowledge of what a primate. We know a lot about primates. So why do people say we know nothing about these creatures? Well, we do know a lot about them.
We do.
We know a lot about primates. We know that primates don't have that great sense of smell. Bigfoot's not going to smell us from 10 miles away or 5 miles away. It's not going to be able to go, oh, there's another Bigfoot within 20 miles. It's not going to do that. Bears can do that. Hogs can do that. Dogs can do that. The problem is, and just look at their faces. Everybody says their nose is flat. Well, that's where all our nerve endings for our that go to our brain for the nose goes, is right in here. That's why we don't smell so good. Literally. I mean, not figuratively.
Right.
But that's why our sense of smell is not so good, is because we don't have much room for those nerve sensors. Now think about a bear that's got a long snout. All those needs are sensory organs for the sense of smell. So that's why a Bigfoot isn't. I mean, it may be able to detect, like, I smell something that's bizarre, odd, or foreign.
Right.
If you think about it, people say, oh, well, I descent and I do all that. It's all nonsense, because you're not hunting. Again, you're not hunting a dog, a cat, a feline, a canine, an ursa, a bear, or an ungulate. But the thing is, with primates, what's our one weakness?
Our one weakness? We have a lot of weaknesses.
Our biggest weakness.
Serious things are just one.
Our biggest weakness.
What was that?
It's just like, oh, only one.
Yeah.
Our biggest weakness is our curiosity. That's the term, curiosity killed the cat.
Well, yeah.
Right. So when a Sasquatch smells something, as long as you're not skulking around and acting like you're hunting for something, it's going to look. It's going to be curious. When we hear a boom, we're looking out the window. What happened?
Right.
Oh.
Right. Yeah, totally makes sense. Let's talk about real quick your new book you got coming out.
It came out June 1st. The Psychology of Bigfoot: A Guide to Understanding Bigfoot Claims. It describes a lot of psychological, not maladies, but reasonings why things happen in the why somebody will go out 1,000 times and see Bigfoot 1,000 times, and come back, and why don't they have evidence? Why is it that they're going out and having they're having all these experiences when we know it's a rare thing? Talk a little bit. In my second book, I talk about Bigfoot behavior from a primate standpoint. In this book, I talk more about people and their, and some of the things like cognitive dissonance. Like you have some people that really think they're the cat's meow when it comes to Bigfoot. What I'm giving you is just my ideas and my notions and like that. And you can find out for yourself. I'm not the end all be all. I'm sure somebody may have some tweaks on what I say and they have some reasonings for or against what I say. That's fine. If they can beat me in an argument, that's all fair and fine.
Yeah.
But there's people out there that, I'll give you one great example. The statement, I'm not a believer, I'm a knower. Well, what do you know? What do you know? And
know what they saw.
Maybe, but you can tell the way they put it in there. Like they're trying to say they've seen a Bigfoot, now they know everything there is about it. Just ask them. And I remember this guy saying, "It's like, oh well, he's saying, oh well, they do this, they do that, they do this because I'm a knower." I said, well, I came back at him. I said, well, I'm a knower too. I've had 2 sightings myself. His response, well, unless you've had 37 sightings. Now, I don't know about you or me. How many times have you seen a motor vehicle?
Every day.
You had to change the transmission. You had to fix the transmission.
Right.
You had to do brake pads. You had to change a brake drum. You had to change no. So what do you know? Right. So the term I find is very arrogant, because when somebody is found, I'm a knower, it's almost like you're some sort of elite person. All right. What's wrong with saying I believe because I've had a sighting? Now they got to trump everybody. I'm a knower. So it's an arrogant expression. It's almost like, somebody in our group saying I'm an expert, right? It's the same thing to me as somebody saying they're an expert, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's another thing. I'm not hung up on the term expert. I just don't use it myself. I don't use it myself. But
now I have used it. I have used it, and I will say why. Is because I used to believe that Bigfoot existed, but now I know Bigfoot exists. It's not that I know everything about it. It's just I know they exist. But I can see that some people using that term. Yeah, as some people who use the term are like, now I know everything about them.
Right. And when you just say I'm a knower, that's very arrogant type of way. Like, hey, I know they exist because I've had 2 sightings. I know they exist because I've seen one. I know they exist because when you just say I know, I'm a knower, then you're acting, you're stating a reason. It's like the same person that goes in there and says, and this aggravates me too, is even though the picture may be fake, and you may end up taking it, you see it, put a picture up, and it's fake. Oh, okay, that's like saying I'm a knower. It's like you're putting it out there, but not giving us any reason why.
Right.
And we need to be better than that. It's not that I'm mad at these people or I'm against these people. I think we need to be better than that. We need to stop sounding so dang desperate to prove this thing exists. Right. Yeah. And that's what we sound like when we start pointing out stick structures everywhere, and we start saying, oh, these rock stacks, or my gifting bowl was emptied, so it had to be Bigfoot, or we're presenting evidence that's got no other supporting evidence to it, like unfortunately like a tree coming down, it's got to be Bigfoot. We're making ourselves look like fools to the outside world. We make ourselves look like fools, and I don't think these people quite see that. And that's because again, like I talk about in my book, is illusionary superiority. People feel that okay, I've seen a Bigfoot now. I know everything there is about it. Now I'm going to go out there and
Mhm.
that's Bigfoot and that's Bigfoot and that's Bigfoot. And there's a certain cat that'll charge $3,000 to go on an expedition with him, and all day long he'll point out tree structures,
Mhm.
right? But not show you a Bigfoot, not show you a print. But yet, when he's out by himself, he always gets these nice little face shots of one.
Right.
So you got to
Right.
put people into the question of where their mind is at.
Right.
And as an investigator, a real world investigator who has arrested over 2,500 people in his career, who has interviewed probably 1,000 criminals,
Mhm.
when I look at this stuff, it's ridiculous. And people don't get that. I can look at this from an outsider's point of view and go, that's ridiculous. That's
Yeah.
completely asinine. And the problem is the people are so, the people that normally do this, they're so caught up in their own illusionary superiority, which is the term,
Mhm.
is that they refuse to see any part of the argument. Like, you realize what you're sounding like to other people.
Right.
And then as a whole group, folks that want to be taken seriously, we get so aggravated because media loves those people.
Yep.
And
Absolutely.
the reason why they love those people is a lot of times they're so quackish, it's good for a laugh.
Mhm.
So when these people think they're getting on, well, I saw the Bigfoot 5 times, I'm always out, and the media is on them, they think they're doing a great service, and look how great I did. Yeah, you did great, and the reason why they did it is because people out there are not laughing with you, they're laughing at you, and they just don't get that.
Yep. I get you. Well, this has been a quick show. I'll tell you what, I could sit and talk to you all night.
Well, it's been fun.
Yeah. It's been a lot.
Like I said, there's a lot of good evidence out there. We just need to be a little more laser focused on the good evidence and less focused on the stuff that will cause distractions, and that'll further the cause.
Absolutely.
That's a good way to put it. That is a great way to put it. Focus on
Yeah.
stuff that is, I would call hard evidence.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We'll have to have you back on, Steve.
Yep. And if there is hard evidence, remember, double check it, triple check it.
Oh,
all
yeah.
the checks on it. Research it, because you never know who's putting. You don't know the person that's putting out that evidence. A lot of time we've seen good evidence come out there, and it turns out to be bad.
Mm-hmm.
And remember, and my last quote of the night is, no piece of evidence is worth anything if it doesn't have a story behind it. You need to know the who, what, when, where, and why, or it's worthless. Somebody shows you a picture with none of that background, or a video with none of that background, question it.
Question it. Yeah, absolutely. That totally makes sense. I want to thank Mickey G, Gary Spike Sr., Diane, Tex, Hand of Odd, Two Shadows, and Maggie M10. Thank you all for the super chats and the memberships.
Thank you.
We appreciate y'all.
Support the channel, guys. Support this channel.
Yes, thank you. Appreciate that. And if you haven't done so, please go over and subscribe to Steve's channel. Paranormal Paul just dropped his link again for everybody to go join and subscribe. And be sure to turn on the bell icon, because you know what, Steve, you do have some good content. So,
Yep.
For sure. And thank you so much for coming on. Like I said,
Oh,
we'll have you back on.
absolutely. Great being on. Good seeing you guys all again.
Yes.
And I'll have a margarita in your honor tonight.
There you go. Please do.
There you go. Thank you.
All right, guys.
And tomorrow night, guys, tune in. We're actually going to be just talking about, this comes from your neck of the woods here, Steve, the Arnie Johnson case. You know who Arnie Johnson is? The devil made me do it. The guy who murdered someone and said he was possessed by the devil.
Well, kind of my neck of the woods. It's probably about 3.5 hours away, but
Well,
yeah.
closer to your neck of
For
the
us,
woods
that's
than
not far.
Yeah, that's true.
mine. So yeah, tomorrow night we're going to be talking about that case and the Ed Lorraine Warren type stuff. So anyway, good night, everybody, and we'll see y'all tomorrow.
See everybody tomorrow.